office of the Always Believe House. Oh, today we're going to find zeros of quadratics by factoring. Remember, the zero of a quadratic, the zero of any function, is where the graph crosses the x-axis. You can get this with factoring. That's one of the most important things you're learning in here. When you factor it, you can solve equations with exponents, because when you factor, the exponent goes away, okay? An equation with an exponent of 2 can have at most 2 zeros. In Algebra 2, you'll do cubics, which can cross the x-axis 3 times. So we're going to go through this. A magical whiteboard appears, and let's start finding these zeros. Okay, so on number 1, the first thing we're going to do is get the factors that turn the factors into zeros. So on number 1, we're going to draw 2 parentheses, and the factors of 8 that add up to 6 are 2 and 4, aren't they? They both need to be plus, and we can put n and n at the bottom, right? That turns into the parentheses. So n plus 2, n plus 4 equals 0. Now then, we're going to only do this, we'll do it a couple of times. So over to the left, write down n plus 2 equals 0. If you do that, move the 2 across, you get n equal negative 2, don't you? Write down n plus 4 equals 0. Move the 4 over, we would get n equal negative 4. So the zeros and factors are always going to have opposite signs. The zeros and factors will always have opposite signs. So what we wrote down here was the factors. The zeros are going to be, the opposite of positive 2 is a negative 2. The opposite of a positive 4 is a negative 4. Those are my zeros. So all you got to do is factor it, switch the signs, you got your zeros. Let's go to number 3. Sorry about that. On this one here, we're going to pull out the GCF. So we're going to divide both of the terms by x. The x turns into the bluebell truck, and then we have x plus 8. These are the factors, right? The zeros are going to be opposites. So right here, this factor, if I write this factor equal to 0, x will still be 0, right? So my zeros will be 0, and the opposite of a positive 8 is negative 8. So your zeros and your factors are always opposites, okay? If there's no parentheses, if you factor out a GCF of x, one of the zeros will be 0, okay? Go to the next one. Number 5, our GCF is n in it. So we'll have n parentheses, n plus 2 equals 0. The zeros, remember, these are the factors. The zeros, this one will be 0. This one will be negative 2. So the zeros are going to be 0 and negative 2. If I input those numbers, I will output 0. This is what you were doing on the star reviews all fall when you were graphing that curve and then writing down the zeros. You could have got those zeros by factoring. You just didn't know how to do that yet. Let's go to the next one, number 7. I want the factors of 6 that add up to 7. That's 1 and 6. I need a negative 7, so they'll both be negative, and I'll put an a on the bottom. Those are my parentheses. So a minus 1, a minus 6 equals 0. These are my factors. So my zeros are going to be the opposites, right? The opposite of negative 1 is a positive 1. I don't put the plus. And the opposite of a negative 6 is a positive 6. Those are my zeros. Ho, 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 ho. Okay, I'm going to skip until we get to this one right here. So on this one right here, a little bit different. I'll do a couple of these with you. We got to multiply 3 and 14. We can't get a GCF out of here. So 3 times 14 is 42. Multiply, get 42. Add, get 13. That's 6 and 7. I'm adding, so they'll both be negative. And then I'm going to put a 3x on the bottom. So this will be negative 2 over x, and this will be negative 7 over 3x, right? That's by parentheses. So x minus 2, and then 3x minus 7. If there's a number in front of the x, you'll get a fractional root. Okay, so let's write this over here. 3x minus 7 equals 0. I'm going through this pretty quick. Move over the 7. The sign will switch, and then divide by 3. This will be your 0. Notice that the 7 is the numerator and the 3 is the denominator. That happens every single time. So the number in front of x, or your coefficient, will be your denominator. The constant will be your numerator. So right here, these are my factors. The zeros will have the opposite signs. So the zero of this will be a positive 2, and the opposite of a negative is a positive. The constant is your numerator. The coefficient is your denominator. That's how you'll do that every single time. So if there's a number in front of the x, that number goes into the denominator every single time. And your zeros and your factors will have opposite signs. This parabola will cross the x-axis at 2 and 3 or 2.333 on your calculator if you were to graph it. Let's do one more like that. Let's do this one right here. This is kind of a big number. So we're going to multiply 35 and 6 and get 210. That's right. And we want to subtract and get 11. Subtract and get 11, that's going to be 10 times 21. The more you do this, you will not have to use a calculator. The more you do this, the quicker you get. The 21 will be negative, the 10 will be positive, and I'm going to put 35 on the bottom, 35V, right? Okay, the 10 and 35, I can divide those by 2 and get 2 over divide by 5, right? So 7V, that's going to be a plus. And then right here, I can divide these by 7. And I'll get negative 3 over 5V, won't I? So 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. 7 times 5 is 35. Those are going to be my parentheses. So 7V plus 2 and 5V minus 3 equals 0. Those are my factors. Important you know the difference. The zeros will have opposite signs. So the zeros of the first one, the opposite of a positive is a negative. The 2 is the numerator. The number in front of the letter will be the denominator. That's my 0. The next one, the opposite of a negative is a positive. The 3 will be my numerator. The 5 will be my denominator. The parabola will cross the x-axis at those points. We'll do one more with a number in front of the letter. Let's do this one right here. So I'm going to multiply 35 times 2 and get 70. I need to subtract and get 3. That's going to be 7 times 10 in it. The 10 will be negative. I'm subtracting, so the signs are opposite, and I'm putting 35B on the bottom. Now then, simplify. These divide by 7, I'll get 1 over 5B. These divide by 5, I'll get negative 2 over 7B, right? So those will be my parentheses. So 5B plus 1 are my factors, right? And 7B minus 2. Those are my factors. My zeros. Remember, we're going to switch the signs and generate a fraction. So the opposite of a plus is a negative. The 1 is my numerator. The 5 is the denominator. Not that difficult. If you were to do 5B plus 1 equals 0, you would move the 1 over and divide by 5. That's why the coefficient goes on the bottom. This one right here is going to be a positive. I don't put it. The 2 is the numerator. The 7 is the denominator. So these are my zeros, okay? Have a blast finishing this up. You'll do well, okay? Really important. You could go from the factors to the zeros. It's a big deal when you're doing these problems. You're actually solving real-life solutions, which we'll do in the next unit. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Remember, you are amazing. You are created to do wonderful things, and you are awesome.